このテープは何が映ってるんですか？
ただし裏と表が逆転しているんです。
What's up, everyone? I am the Kaiju no Kami, and the Halloween month continues with Kamen Rider Agito, which is also celebrating its 20th anniversary. Kamen Rider Kuuga was the first full-length television series Kamen Rider endured in over a decade. It was such a success that Toei immediately decided to continue the franchise with a follow-up series called Kamen Rider Agito. Furthermore, Toei hired Jetman's head writer Toshiki Inoue to helm Agito. Inoue continued the trend Kuuga started by writing Agito as if it were a cop drama that featured Kamen Riders in it, rather than being a traditional Tokusatsu series audiences were familiar with. Over the years, there has been much debate as to whether Agito is a direct sequel to Kuuga or not, especially because producer Shinichiro Shirakura stated that Agito takes place in a parallel world, but audiences are welcome to make it a direct sequel to Kuuga if they so choose. Contradictory to this statement, however, is the show's own dialogue, which declares it as being set 2 years after the events of Kuuga.
未確認が滅んで2年。このまま何も起こらなければ間違いなく対策班は解散になる。それを防ぐために君は話をでっち上げた。
Whichever your preference is, Agito is not a Kamen Rider series to miss out on. What makes it so great? Let's kick this review off to find out. The Heroes. Agito's an interesting series where we have 3 main plot lines that follow along 3 main characters that occasionally intersect with each other. Obviously, the main man is Agito himself, who goes by the name of Shoichi Sugami, played by Toshiki Kashu. Now, the interesting thing is, Shoichi has amnesia, so no one knows if that is his actual name or not. They only think that is his name thanks to an empty envelope he was found adrift with. He has no idea who he is, where he came from, if he has any family waiting for him, nor how he even is Agito. He just is. It really sets the stage apart from other series as the audience is learning about the character as he is. Another bonus is that it allows Shoichi to be fully fleshed out as the show progresses, giving him one of the best arcs in the entire history of Kamen Rider. One aspect I enjoyed was his banter with other people where he would randomly ponder if he was good at something in the past.
もしかしてさ、翔一くんって農家の生まれだったりして。
それは農かな。
Although there is this moment here, which was also a possibility.
それにほら、もし過去を思い出して俺が凶悪な犯罪者とかだったらどうよ。
意外と大金持ちのお坊ちゃまかもしれないよ。そしたら結婚してあげる。
A few other traits of Shoichi is that he clearly loves to cook, so he grows his own vegetable garden at the home he resides in. He is an expert cleaner, and he loves to make puns.
そっちゃですけど、どうぞ。
すいません。
冷めないうちにちゃちゃっと飲んでください。
は
I should also mention that Shoichi has a habit of guilt-tripping people when he can.
うちのは無農薬ですから、生でも安心して食べれますよ。
いや、僕は。
あれ？もうすぐ死ぬかもしれない俺のキャベツが食べれないんだ。
ちょっと仕事が残ってますので。
そうですか。ああ、もうすぐ死ぬかもしれないのに、死ぬ前に氷川さんと草むしりしたかったのに。
As Agito, Shoichi has a gold and black base form he transforms into using a henshin belt that had become a part of his body.
変身!
His attacks are all melee based with the horns on his head expanding whenever he performs his final attack. He does have a few additional forms, one that turns his body blue as he wields a staff. His sword form morphs his body red. he can also merge the two together. More than halfway into the show, he acquires his second to last form, deemed Burning Mode. Sometimes he will power up enough to shatter the armor on his burning form, revealing his ultimate style, Shining Agito. Agito comes equipped with a bike that can also transform into a hoverboard. Shoichi stays at the home of a college professor with the professor's son Taichi and his best friend's daughter Mana Kazuya. Takeshi Masu portrays Professor Yoshihiko Misugi, while Tokimasa Tanabe and Rina Akiyama are Taichi and Mana. Tanabe would come back to play Junta Abe in Kamen Rider Forze, while Akiyama was featured in Bokenger as the female Santa Claus and played the train hostess Naomi in Kamen Rider Den-O. While Professor Misugi's role is quite minimal, not to discount Misugi or anything, it's just that his role is less important compared to some of the other characters. Taichi does get some stellar moments every now and then, with the best one being from when Shoichi temporarily owned a bakery.
ビタミン C たっぷりのピクルスサンド、これを食べたら10歳若返りますよ。あ、そしたら赤ちゃんになっちゃうか。いただくわ、私も。前あり。As for Mana, she is one of the stronger female characters from a Kamen Rider series, as she is sternly written while having a tragic backstory. Her dad died under mysterious circumstances 2 years prior to the show's premiere, which left her orphaned as her mother had died when she was a baby. As such, she will constantly think about her dearly departed, which drives her to help Shoichi as she comes to learn he knows something about her dad that he doesn't remember. In addition, early on it is revealed that she has psychic abilities that allows her to read the minds of others. This becomes quite useful in one instant when Shoichi is framed for a murder he did not commit. As I mentioned earlier, the series is more like a crime drama that happens to have Kamen Riders in it, so naturally there are going to be police officers involved. The main trio of cops who play a prominent role throughout Agito include Makoto Hikawa, Sumiko Ozawa, and Takahiro Omuro. Jun Kaname, Toku Fujita, and Akiyoshi Shibata cover this excellent trio, who are the main operators of the G3 unit under the police force regarded as Saul.
Better call Saul.
The G3 unit is the name given to the division of officers who are in charge of taking out the evils of the world. Hikawa dons a suit of armor called G3 that is meant to enhance all of his abilities in order to combat these evils. Regretfully, the system was designed to combat the Grangi, the villains of Kuuga, as opposed to the Unknowns, the villains here, which causes some issues early on as Hikawa often finds himself to be nothing more than a punching bag until the system is upgraded. As G3X, Hikawa is able to take on the Unknowns more efficiently, which is partially thanks to the most badass Gatling gun ever. Hikawa may be a clumsy oaf who can't even cut a wooden board without breaking the saw.
Uwa! 不器用なんですね。
不器用。
But he is an officer who also puts others in front of his own life, which is why he was initially scouted to become G3 thanks to an incident that involved a cruise ship known as the Akatsuki. One day when he was on patrol, he noticed the Akatsuki was in a perilous situation and traversed headlong into a raging storm towards it, rescuing the passengers in the process.
空から奇妙な光が降り注いでいるような。そして現場に向かった僕は光の中で暴風雨に見舞われている 暁号を発見したんです。
Hikawa may be the best character in the show thanks to the vast personality he has throughout. We will see him try to do his best work, while at the same time also being open to learning new techniques to enhance his abilities, along with having doubts about his performance.
やっぱりね。
ちょっと待ってください。抱負を取れないから私は彼より劣っているというんですか?
It's truly remarkable how much range Kaname is able to display in such a short time span. Ozawa is a snarky, ferocious woman who hates it when she doesn't get her way. She isn't afraid to reprimand anyone who pisses her off either.
君たちはアンノウンが喋れることに気づかなかったのか。そっちの方が迂闊だろ。
そんな、アンノウンが意味のある言葉を発したのはこれが初めてのことです。気づきようがありません。
どうかな?
Moreover, she can drink a multitude of large mugs of beer and still accomplish her job with nothing more than a slight hiccup.
生ビールおかわり。
なんかスカスカしてるんです。
生おかわり。スカスカ？
だから寂しいんです。
生おかわり。生おかわり。お待ちどうさま。
G3X。
小沢さん、本当に天才だったんですね。すいません。
I also feel like she is meant to represent the women demographic who watch Kamen Rider thanks to comments like this.
小沢さん、なんでそんなに氷川さんに肩入れするんです？北条さんだっていいじゃないですか、才能ありそうだし。
何言ってんの？氷川くんの方が可愛いでしょ？
可愛いってそれだけの理由で？
大事なことよ。
As for Omuro, he's there mostly for comic relief and to be the ignorant one for the occasional bit of exposition when absolutely necessary. He is a fun character who never gets on your nerves, as Inoue knew to not go overboard with him in the comedy department.
あなたの力よ。ほら、食べなさい。
どうしたんでしょう、室さん。
小沢さん、 G3X の装着員として目をつけている人物がいるとのことですが。
ええ。
会わせてもらえませんか、その人物に。
だからそれって。
A couple of other notable cops include an older detective Hikawa sometimes works with named Koji Kono. Kono was the lead detective in investigating the death of Mano's father, a crime he is still trying to solve to this day.
可能犯罪。それじゃあまるで
安納の仕業か？だがな、笠谷信之が殺されたのは2年前。安納が現れたのは最近のことだろ？
There is also Toru Hojo. Hojo is portrayed as a complete jackass who is jealous of Hikawa's credentials and constantly tries to take over as G3 himself. And the one time he is successful, he runs away from battle like a little bitch.
緊急解除スイッチだろう。北条さん離脱するつもりです。
At one point, he even attempts to have his own armored system, which ends in failure for he is unable to match the genius that is Ozawa. Hojo is often portrayed as a despicable person you'd like to see Ozawa insult every now and then.
将棋で言えば負に過ぎない。
あなたは負にもなれなかったけどね。
いやー、こんな時に職場を離れて談笑できる余裕は皮肉でなく羨ましい限りです。
あなた、なぜそういつも一言多いわけ？用があるならさっさと言いなさい。何言ってんのよ。出来の悪いのはあなたの方でしょ。
まあそう向きにならないでください。G3 システムにもまだ使い道ありますよ。
Just already. Still, he does have his own merits as he will do whatever is right in the eyes of the law, as was the case when he came across a crooked cop. Junya Masaki is quite talented to get you to feel bad for him from time to time, while hating him immensely. The third major plotline of the series revolves around a former athletic swimmer, Ryu Ashihara, who becomes a monster known as Gills. Ryo was involved in an accident that left him hospitalized for several weeks. After returning to his daily life, he found himself changing in more ways than one without any knowledge as to how.
Change
Turn and face the strange changes.
As if this tragedy wasn't enough, which also led to him being betrayed by his swim coach, he comes to learn that his father committed suicide. A book full of names is handed to him after the funeral, which leads him on a quest to find the names of those listed within its binding.
この名前に見覚えありませんか？兄さんの手帳か。さあなあ、知らない名前ばかりだな。
It is also there where he learns his father was aboard the Akatsuki. This in turn furthers the plot as the mystery of what happened on the Akatsuki begins to unravel.
聞き覚えはないですか？暁号という名前に。いいえ。ではなぜここにあなたの名があるんです？
Sadly, like with Tuscan Zyuohger, Yusuke Tomoe ruined his acting career by assaulting a girlfriend of his. He was also once married to Time Pink's actress, Mika Katsumura. For the most part, Ryo is a solid character in the long run. Nonetheless, the road to get there is a strenuous one, for sometimes it can seem like Inoue was unsure of what direction he wanted to take Ryo in. The man gets injured all of the time, and you can play a drinking game in response to how many times the dude wakes up in either someone's bed or in a body of water. I understand he likes to swim, but come on. One of the positives about this whole scenario is how it plays out. As I had already stated, Shoichi is already Agito when the show starts without having any knowledge of how he got there. He just is. Ryo, on the other hand, compliments Shoichi for we actually get to see his transformation from Ryo to Gills for the first time, along with the trials and tribulations he must go through as his body evolves. It's quite compelling, for you're never sure what is going to happen to him next. Well, outside of him getting injured, I rather enjoyed this aspect despite the negatives surrounding it. It also makes the moment Agito and Gills cross paths well worth the wait. Like with Agito and G3, Gills also receives an upgrade. There is one final rider to be discussed, and that is another Agito, Karu Kino, played by Takanori Higuchi. Kino was a doctor who lost his license thanks to an incident that cost him his brother. He too has become an Agito, albeit a more organic version of Agito that resembles a cross between Agito and Gills. There is a plethora of other characters who make their presence known, a vast majority of which are the Akatsuki passengers. Some strange incident occurred while on the ship, and yet no one talks about their ordeal, which furthers the tension as you find yourself wanting to know what transpired as the plot develops. The first rule of the Akatsuki is you don't talk about the Akatsuki.
そして暁号の人々も榊秋のケースのように超能力と無関係ではないようだ。両者の間には何らかの因果関係がある。
I also have to give a shout out to my boy, Yataka Hirose, who also makes an appearance towards the end of the series.
やはり G3 ユニットは存続させておきましょう。ただし、今度はアンノーンを守るためにね。
The villains. The villains are a bunch of angelic creatures who are just so sweet. They're going around minding their own business, just performing tasks of killing people, only to be attacked by the Japanese police force who has deemed them as unknowns.
God, he's a bigger buzzkill than Buzz Killington.
Not much about these creatures is known publicly. Most people know that there are a bunch of monsters who show up, kill families in some of the most violent means, and that is it. All the unknowns are based on an organic creature of some sort, with some of my favorites including the snakes for their Egyptian-styled garments, a bee creature who admired its own work of art, not to mention the other bee creature being quite chill as she followed her prey coming down the escalator. some cats, birds, and so on. An intriguing aspect in relation to the unknowns is that they will do this weird hand motion before they attack their targets, as if they are praying to a god. What's even cooler is they just don't give a damn about who their target is. Be it a man, woman, or child, everyone is fair game. It's nice to see monsters be monsters that hold nothing back when it comes to their mission. Another compelling aspect is how they have weapons that they can literally summon out of thin air. Finally, they have these white light-like halos that appear above their heads, as if they are angels. What's even better is that despite not conversing much, none of them appear to be mindless creatures, as they are all intellectuals who try to serve their purpose as efficiently as possible. All of this adds a terrifying element that makes the unknowns as exciting to watch as it would be to run from them if you were to ever meet them. The unknowns are led by what seems to be an evil being who kicks the series off as a baby, becoming a child, before aging into an adult. For the sake of the review, I'm going to call him Damien. Damien is an enigmatic character that you are unsure as to whether he is human or not, as he proclaims to love humans while killing them. Or at least, that is how it seems initially before the show's plot twist spiral into territory you never saw coming.
あなたは人間を愛しているはずだ。ええ、同時に私は人の、人でない部分、人はただ人でいればいい。
Ryunosuke Kamiki portrays the child version of Damien, while Rei Haneo is his adult form. There is also a mysterious man who calls himself Tetsuya Sawaki that enters the fray early on as a disciple to Damien, who also shares a connection to Shoichi I cannot dive into.
Agito, もうすぐ死にます。
まだね。アギトは貴重なサンプルだ。
As is the case with every actor in Agito, Atsushi Ogawa does a wonderful job as Sawaki.
時の流れが早まった。お前の隠された力が覚醒する。
The effects and music. Due to Agito using early 2000s digital cameras, CGI, and chroma key, the effects can be hit or miss. Alternatively, the music is downright phenomenal. It's very disheartening because when the effects are practical, they are exceptional. When they are either CGI or green screened in, they are all over the place. Explosions and fire effects can often look awkward due to this, with there being some very notable moments that are cringeworthy. Fortunately, the effects are offset by an engaging story with solid acting that keeps one away from focusing on the negatives. Not to mention the exceptional camera work that can make even the tiniest moment feel ambitious. Then there are those moments where a color filter is used to enhance the mood a scene conveys, as is the case when Shoichi went to visit Sawaki and his entire mansion is immersed in green. The fight scenes themselves are also engulfed in atmosphere, with a wide array of them taking place at night, while others feature smoke effects and impressive lighting. One of my favorite moments comes from the stunt work atop a police car. Those who have watched the anime The Big O, another series about amnesiacs, might recognize some pieces of music and notice how they are integrated into Agito scenery quite fluidly, as if the music and the scenes were written concurrently. That is because composer Toshihiko Sahashi helmed both series, and his music is very grandiose, providing religious connotations into its mix. Every scene of Agito is oozed in atmosphere thanks to his compositional masterpieces that heighten your senses, amping up the tension. Even something as simple as watching a car pull up in front of a hospital can become epic in scale thanks to Sahashi's musical prowess, which was something he was quite notable for in The Big O. I really feel like Agito would not have been as effective with any other soundtrack involved, which is something I cannot often say no matter how much I love the scores to some of my other favorite Rider series. For example, as incredible as the music is to Kamen Rider Blade, I'm sure other artists could have made a soundtrack just as worthy to the series as the one it did have. For Agito, on the other hand, I just can't imagine the music being anything different. The opening theme, sung by Shinichi Ishihara, is equally as good as Sahashi's score and fits the tone of the show quite efficiently. I cannot say the same for the remixed version that is heard from episode 36 onward. It's obnoxiously irritating, and this is coming from someone who loves techno music. The episodes. Unlike other Kamen Rider series, Agito only has one episode that could be considered filler in its entirety, and even that ends up developing real. Thus, that is the only episode I can actually nominate as being my least favorite because it is the only episode that didn't feel like the others. It's also the only episode Inoue did not write, which featured the first time Yasuko Kobayashi worked on an episode of Kamen Rider. The episode takes place several weeks before the episodes that preceded it and follows a boy fleeing from some men in suits. He crosses paths with Ryo, who helps the kid out while also teaching him a lesson.
家出中って顔ならで運転手を探したわけかこれ一本じゃ安いな
It's not a bad episode by any means, but like I said, it is the only filler-esque episode since every other episode in the series advances the main plot. There's also this weird chase scene where Ryo stops at a red light and the kid runs off the bike for a bit before Ryo picks him up again. Okay, so you're in the middle of a car chase and you just stop at the red light? What? Yeah, that was completely pointless. Lastly, for some reason, the episode is in a 4:3 video format instead of widescreen like the rest of the show was recorded in. And I'm not exactly sure why. Perhaps it was to signify its placement in the timeline? Nevertheless, it's an odd choice, albeit an interesting one. Before I get into my favorite, I do want to mention another factor that makes the show enticing. Shoichi doesn't transform into Agito in every episode. There's 2 or 3 episodes where he is absent from the fight, which is something you rarely ever see given he's the main lead. As for my favorite episode, that is hard to pick due to how driven Agito is narratively. Most of the stories are centered around 2-parters that are intertwined with the main plot. Originally, I was planning to talk about a trilogy tale that's centered around a woman proclaiming to be Shoichi's old girlfriend and the coolest unknown in the series. Instead, I'm going to give my vote to episode 42, which finally shows us what happened on the Akatsuki. I won't go into details for obvious reasons. Just know that this episode feels like something Stephen King would have written with the way it was executed.
冗談じゃないわ。殺人犯なんかと一緒にいられるもんですか。今すぐ下ろしてよ。
こういうのって大体第一発見者がしてんじゃないの?
It's suspenseful, tense, and pays off everything the series had been building up to at this point. The movie and specials. There's one theatrical film and a couple of meaningless specials. First up is some weird special that looks like our heroes were kidnapped by a Sesame Street reject.
何です？
選ばれなくてよかった。
なんだこれは。
It's just weird. Following that is another special that sees the police wanting to mass produce G3 suits to help combat the unknown menace. Omuro becomes G3 mild under the notion that if he can don a G3 suit, anyone can.
あなたならできるわ。誰にでもできるんだから。
そうですよ。小村さんなら必ずできます。誰にでもできるんですから。
I do like the design of the unknown, while the rest of the special leaves a lot to be desired. It also has a subplot that contradicts an event in the show, so it cannot be canon because of this. Additionally, Garo's Masaki Kyomoto makes an appearance as the doctor who initially took care of Shoichi when he was first recovered.
CB1300 マイスペシャルだ。
一つ聞いてもいいですか?
The theatrical movie, Project G4, is quite average for a Kamen Rider movie, while being subpar compared to the rest of the series. It kicks off during the summertime with a government facility of orphan kids with superpowers being attacked by an army of ant unknowns. Two kids escape and end up living homeless for a couple of months until their paths cross again thanks to the unknowns who attacked their home, returning for seconds. It is also revealed that the Self-Defense Force was in control of the facility and one of their commanders infiltrated the G3 team to steal Ozawa's data plan for a G4 battlesuit, using it for their own devious plot. A rocket launcher? What do you think this is? Resident Evil?
Game over.
They kidnap Mana, leaving Shoichi, Ryo, and Hikawa to rescue her along with battling off the unknowns who have returned once more. The worst part about the film is that it is a tad boring as it lacks energy, doesn't feature any of the unique camera work the show is known for, nor is the soundtrack all that thrilling. The best part is the cameo from Kamen Rider Ichigo himself, Hiroshi Fujioka, who is one of Ozawa's former commanders.
君らしくないな。だったら思うようにしたらいい。目の前の障害をものともしないのが君のいいところだ。
You can also see Gills pull a Piccolo. At At the end of the day, Agito is without a doubt one of the greatest Kamen Rider series ever made. It is not flawless, as the ending can leave you scratching your head for days. Nevertheless, it truly deserves a 5 out of 5 grown-ups in spandex. That's all I've got. Do not miss out on this one. Until next time, bye.
菅野さん、どこに行くんです？
ちょっと買い物に。
スピードの出しすぎです。気をつけてください。
はい。